You're listening to Games from the Cellar, where we play board games and then talk about them. I am Steven, normally your host, but tonight I was absent. Chris was joined by John, Sam, and a new panelist, Jeremy, to play Splendor. Splendor, designed by Marc Andre, was first published by Space Cowboys in 2014. Later editions were co-published with Asmodee. In 2014, it won a myriad of nominations and awards, including winning a Golden Geek for Best Family Board Game and Board Game of the Year. It won Game of the Year awards in Japan, Finland, Norway, Poland, the Netherlands, Germany, and the United Kingdom. It was a Spiel des Jahres nominee in 2014. At the time of this recording, Splendor has a 7.4 rating with 72,000 ratings on Board Game Geek and has a ranking of 197. It's a 2 to 4 player family weight game that should play in about 30 minutes. Thank you for joining us in the cellar as we go in depth with Splendor.
So today we're going to be talking about Splendor.
Chris, you were the one who nominated this game to the table.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about why?
This is always a favorite. It's kind of like chess. I think it's funny. We talked about doing a podcast on Splendor that we were just going to leave, 30, 40 minutes of blank airtime.
It is that kind of game, isn't it?
Yeah. If people start getting rowdy at your house, then you sit there and you go, hey, let's play Splendor. And all of a sudden, it's silent. You could hear a pin drop.
It's quieter than a chess match.
Yeah. You hear the tokens roll around, but that's about it. There's no conversation. Maybe the first 5 turns or something, there will be a little conversation, but it just becomes all strategic.
You go, hey, Chris is hoarding all those gems again.
Yep. Yeah. All right, guys. Sam, you want to tell us about this game?
All right, so Splendor's a classic, I think. It's a classic for our group anyway. We've been playing this for years. I don't know when it first came out. I'm sure Steven does.
I think the publishing on this one, it says 2014 by the Space Cowboys.
It feels older than that. Maybe it's just that your copy's beat up.
Yeah, that box looks loved.
It's been played quite a bit. This is a game that, not just in the game group, but it'll come out with family and other friends that come. It's a very easy game for people to... It's a good... intro game, kind of like Catan or Carcassonne.
It's maybe a 2 or 3 minute rules intro, frankly.
Yeah, it's pretty short. You collect tokens representing the different gems. You spend them to buy cards. The cards are worth points and also additional gems. So you're kind of building a very simple engine where if you buy a lot of the ruby cards, well, now you have a bunch of rubies and you get every turn forever, and you use those to buy more cards.
Do you typically, this was it playing? Maybe half an hour? And is this a game that you sit down and play 2 or 3 times in an evening?
You could.
You could play several games. I've played it several times. I have it on my iPad. I'll play it on the airplane, and I'll get 3 or 4 games in 20, 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it says 30 minutes on the box, and I believe that. Honestly, a lot of what extends a game's runtime is talking, and I don't mind that.
And speed bumps. People that can't make a decision.
And I don't mind the talking. I do kind of mind the speed bumps.
Yeah.
But Splendor, I don't know what it is about Splendor, but you just don't talk. You're just thinking. And we'll get into some of why that is after we've played it, I think.
I think we've all played this before. I know I have an extensive history of playing this. Jeremy, have you ever played this before?
Yes, with you.
Oh. How many times would you say we've played together?
I don't know. A couple dozen, probably.
Wow.
Okay.
I think I've played once or twice, and it's been years.
This might not be your speed. This is a game that I really enjoy. It's a nice game when you have 4 people and you're waiting on a couple more. You know you can knock it out.
Right.
You walk in the door and you're like, okay, I got this game. I'm going to sit here and read the rules. All right, we'll be done here in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then we can join you in a longer game. But this is a quick setup game.
Yeah, my experience with Splendor is probably more akin to Jeremy's. I don't have a number for it, but more than 1 or 2, less than however many multitudes of playthroughs Chris has.
All right. Well, let's give Splendor a roll and see how we do.
Okay, we'll be back.
I can't believe there's no dice.
All right, well, we're back. We just finished Splendor.
What this game has is a fine set of clay poker chips.
And that's about... the silent here is about how you feel after playing a game of Splendor.
Or during a game of
During a game of
Splendor.
Splendor.
This is the quietest game, and I'm trying to figure out why. There's Paul Newman level poker games where they're talking more than people do when they're playing Splendor. And I realize that you're kind of thinking about what you're doing and you got to look at the numbers on all the different cards and everything. But at the same time, it's like, boy, I know a lot of games where there's some pretty heads down, steam burning. But for some reason, this game just makes everybody get quiet.
There was an exceptional amount of table talk this game.
Yeah.
But it had less to do with the game.
I will admit that was intentional on my part. I was trying to throw you off.
Put some noise in it.
He's playing the mind games.
It's kind of nice to see a little gamesmanship coming out of you.
And
Sandy.
it worked. I mean, I won handily, which is...
Yes, you did. You almost doubled the second place player.
Well, yes, but
he's a noob, so you should.
Given a turn or two, and Chris would have caught up to me.
You had a couple good turns
Just
where
Chris?
the cards...
Yeah,
the level 1 cards turned over, oh, I already have all this, and it would be the ones you need. Mm-hmm. And then I turn over something, it's like, oh, I guess I need to take tokens.
Yeah, I had a good run where I just grabbed cards off the bottom.
That's sort of a Sam thing, though, isn't it? Oh, look, I just get to keep this card. Thanks.
Yeah. But I think 3 of us were pretty much playing with the same strategy: get to the base, build up, go for the nobles.
Well, in my
you showed me a different way that I'd seen anybody do before, where you're very heavy on the yellow. I remember Kyle when he played this game, he would not take a card or buy a card unless it had points on it. After the first 3 or 4 cards, he would always go for ones that have points on them.
So I haven't played this in almost 10 years. So I was coming in new, and I'm saying, okay, so I need to get points, but it's more for me. It's a matter of, okay, so figure out what's my minimum stake to get cards, and you guys just seem to be better at building cards that had gemstones on them, which of course gives you this huge ballast. It makes it easier for you to run with what you're doing, and so I ended up picking up cards that had points, which is great, including one of my first cards was a 2-pointer. And that's great. It cost me some serious tokens to do that. And as it turned out, I came in second place with 8 points.
Yep.
So maybe I shouldn't complain.
I've seen people win with that strategy as well, which there is some luck of what cards come out.
Right.
I mean, there were a couple times that you took cards. I think you took one off the top one time. I mean, but you were taking cards that were strategically that you were close to, that you just needed that one yellow, pick up a couple more tokens, and you were able to turn them over.
Right. I was able to reserve a card and take the gold token or gold poker chip, and that was enough to get it. So I knew I had it in my back pocket. So you're taking twice as many turns to make that card work. But at the same time, if you need one more piece, then that's not such a bad play.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, I think it's a question of efficiency, right?
That's exactly what this game is. That's wrapped up in one word. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, the name of the game for me was looking at what can I buy with spending the least amount of tokens, right? Because any turn you spend taking tokens is a turn you haven't picked up a card, which is a turn that puts you behind. Because you're not generating any value.
Right. You either want to be gaining points or you want to be gaining those gemstones, which allows you to gain points later.
So there were a lot of options for the nobles, and I just kind of grabbed whatever cards I could, and then when I saw, okay, well, I only need a couple more of this type to score points there, I'll focus on that. And I just think that's the optimal way to play this game, right? I don't think it's a solved game. There's still decisions you have to make. There's still things you have to pursue. But I think that's the best way to play the game.
Yeah. And I think if we played this again, do you think it would have turned out exactly the same way?
Oh, no, of course not.
We probably would have changed the start player. I mean, it does say in the game the youngest player gets to start, but you were the first player. Things kind of fell in your lap a little bit on some of the cards, but you did play very well, and you went for the nobles.
We all had the same number of turns, Chris.
I understand, but you distracted us.
If you wanted to score more than 7 points...
Yeah, and actually,
I
probably
was
3 turns away from making the 15.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I think me and you were pretty much about the same. I look at what colors show up there, and white was the most. I think white and blue are the most common noble colors.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going for.
I kind of looked, was like, all right, white's pretty common, blue's pretty common, and then we'll see how things go.
But I think the white diamonds are always one of the factors.
Well, that's because we're playing with Chris, and he likes to collect them and hoard tokens. Which
if you notice, I at the end of the game, I had 2 tokens. There was most of the game where I only had 3 or 4 tokens in front of me.
I did.
You
notice.
were the one that had 10. You almost always had 10, and you had quite a bit in front of you.
I never had that many.
You maybe had like 6 or 7.
But I tell you, I never felt like I was hard pressed to get any color. So my one memory of playing this was a color being voided and not being able to do a whole lot because of that. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so I want to make sure that I have that. Ran a little heavy to begin with, and then it turned out that just wasn't an issue when all was said and done.
I'm not saying I intentionally took the last of a stack on a few occasions, but I did.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of the game is to break your dependency on tokens as soon as possible. That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that intent, the focus on what tokens are available, how can I spend things most efficiently, and what's going to change on the other players' turns. I think that's why it's a quiet game, because especially if you get the right group and no one's intentionally distracting things, you can really get into a rhythm and just go and take turns one after another.
Yes, I could see how if you were with 3 experienced players, people that had 10 or more games under their belt, that this game would just cruise around in a circle.
Well, it's also a problem. By the time it gets back to your turn,
A lot's changed.
Samuel's already taken my card. And then Chris took the next one that I wanted. So now I have to rethink everything.
Yeah. The part of the game is you weren't really that distracting. Because I wasn't really paying attention to what you were doing, what John was doing, what Jeremy was doing. So I mean, if somebody is sitting there concentrating, you can kind of screw somebody. Because I could have looked, I could figure, if he gets that chocolate or that brown gemstone, then
I was paying a lot of attention to board state this game.
Board state meaning us, or
yes.
meaning the thing in the middle.
Board state meaning what you guys had already picked and what tokens you had. I made a very deliberate decision when I got my first noble. I looked at Chris's cards, I looked at Jeremy's cards, and I said to myself, okay, I can get the noble this turn, and that next card that I want is still going to be there because Chris can't afford to take it.
And I thought about it a couple times, like taking the gold.
I don't know when the last time I played this game was.
But like you said earlier, maybe 2 dozen, 2 dozen, maybe something
probably
like
about
that.
as many as Jeremy.
It's one of those
maybe
games.
a little
It's a filler game.
Online.
I mean, how long
I don't
did that
remember
game
ever
take
playing
us?
it online.
I mean, it took us
played it on
20 minutes,
Arena.
25 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't
to play.
long.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Race for the Galaxy, where there is a right way to play it, and after you've got 10 or 12 games under your belt, you start figuring out exactly what that is, and then like I said, everybody can roll. But not only can everybody roll, but like I didn't have the ability to open up my vision enough to see what you guys were doing because I was struggling enough just staying within the boundaries of the rules and getting my bit. I had enough to do just look at the middle of the table.
Right, and it was bad enough that you were having to fight to take your turn.
Yes, right, exactly.
Well, and it's going to change every time because the other thing I look at is what's the color that shows up the most on the board. Like right now, there's just a ton of green.
Yeah.
But a ton of green things weren't showing up for us to take.
Yeah, early on, the lower levels were very monochromatic. It kind of felt like we were getting one color at a time.
Yeah.
Which is how this game goes sometimes. There's a lot of variety, but...
I mean, everything up top was either white or blue.
Right, and it's... You do run into this... You do get into kind of a rut where... there's a lot of cards that's been established nobody wants. And so somebody takes a card and a new one is flipped over and that's the card everybody wants. And you know that's what everybody wants because...
And you hope that's the person before you so that you've got a shot at it.
Because nobody took the other cards before, that's not going to change all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, at one point you even said that I reserved a card and you're like, that card's been sitting there the entire game and just as I'm ready to grab it, you took it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's how it happens sometimes. But
Yeah. And like I said, there was 3 of us pretty much doing the same strategy of emptying out the first row. I said before the game, it'll probably empty out the first row and we'll get halfway through the second deck. That's basically what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. Yeah. You called it. This is definitely a... But I enjoyed myself. I had a good time.
Yeah. But I think how many of the level 3 cards were bought?
I think
1 or 2.
1?
Yeah. I was going to say we didn't go after them much at all.
One.
I didn't buy any. I was at level 2.
No, I bought all level 1 and then 4 level 2 cards.
And I think I only bought it because it was the last turn and it was the most points.
Get the most you can get.
Get the most you can get to finish the game.
Yeah, whether it's going to help you that much or not.
They're point efficient. They're not gem efficient.
Right. So the way you might have already figured out how this game turned out, Jeremy and myself, Chris, had 7 points. John finished a strong second with 8 points, and Sam finished with 15 points.
Yeah, he clocked.
So it was a
out
pretty
15.
solid win.
Right, but to be clear, I picked up 4 points on my last turn and 5 points on my second to last turn.
Yeah, the nobles.
Right.
So you went rocketing.
You had your
because you
machine
had 2
going.
nobles.
The nobles were in reach.
Yeah. Like
And me and you were a turn away from our engines.
I felt like I was 3 turns away from where I would have crossed the line with 15. So it gets to that point. You had a better engine that started moving and a little quicker than we did.
I was just a few rounds ahead of you, and so I cruised ahead. But it's not like I was ahead the whole time. It's just I had a boost.
Samuel was plotting
So
before we were.
we joked as we were setting up the microphones.
Yes.
Which one of us is going to complain that there's no dice in this game? And obviously there isn't.
You said, let's get
roll.
And
Let's
there's,
get rolling,
there's no
right?
dice.
And there's no dice to go rolling. But my point is that this is a game where every time it's your turn, all the knowledge you need is there. There's no, I can take a risk and go after this, or I can take a risk and go after that. Short of saying, well, I'll take some gemstones, some tokens, and hope that nobody steals the card that I'm going to take. But even that's kind of laid out in front of you. There's no there's not a whole lot of unpredictability in this game. I mean, it's kind of laid out for you, and you take your optimal turn, and you just hope for the best for the next cards that get turned over. And the point being that all of that luck happens before you have to make a decision. When it comes decision time, it's like, well, this is what's going to net me the most, and that's what I'm going to do. And I typically favor games where there's a way to take a risk and maybe get
reap
a stronger
some rewards
turn out of it,
Yeah.
or if you're in the lead, you say, okay, so now it's time to back off the risk, try to close the deal, get my way across the finish line without taking that risk. This game doesn't have that sort of feature to it, but it seems very popular. And I mean, on a regular basis, you'll see a rocking convention floor with 4 people sitting in the middle of the room, heads down, not making a sound because they're playing Splendor, and while everything's going on around them.
I think one of the good things about this game is it doesn't outstay its welcome. I mean, it's a 20 to 30 minute game.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're losing, frankly, because I have played this, a few times, and I have lost soundly quite a few times, mostly thanks to Chris. So even when you're losing, there's still this feeling of you're just trying to squeeze a little bit more out of the cards in front of you. even if I don't think I'm going to win, I'm still like, but I can get this card. I can grab that card.
Right. You sort of set a goal. You say, well, let's see if I can get 10 points.
Yeah.
I'm not going to win, but let's see if I can get 10 points.
You just,
I take something off the third row?
Yeah.
Or
that kind of thing.
Most
Yeah,
commonly
exactly.
is, can I screw Chris?
well, yes, that's always a consideration.
That's right. That's regardless of the game.
That doesn't even need to be mentioned.
I was going to say, I mean, that's sort of my entire strategy and can't stop, and that's a complete luck fest.
But you're right. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's sweet. Frankly, if you're not paying attention to the game state, you could, there are games where someone just says, "All right, game's over. I hit 15," or you don't realize someone's there until they've got like 13 points.
Yeah, you were polite, and I think you told us when you were at 11.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm at 8 points.
And then
I'm
John
at 11
pointed
points.
out, you can win on the next turn. And
No,
he
I-
basically said,
No, he was like, oh, so you can probably win. And I was like, yeah, I can. I'm going to get 15 points
if
on
that
the next
card
turn.
stays out there for this turn, then I can get...
Yeah.
And we left it out there.
Yeah.
I think we were having fun with it, and I wasn't paying
Normally,
much
by
attention.
the time you can get a noble, it's pretty much almost
Right,
over
essentially,
anyway
some-
because
somebody's
you have
already
enough,
rolling downhill.
you have enough gems to pick up whatever's going to start coming out
essentially,
pretty handily.
essentially
Yeah.
you have to build your engine, as we've been calling it, to the point where you can start generating points. And once you can start generating points, there really isn't a whole lot anyone can do to stop you.
When you say generating points, it's just basically accumulating cards that have
Yeah.
point values
You-
on them.
you
Some
can-
of the gems do, some don't.
Right, you can purchase cards with points on them without spending a single gem chip.
Which gets you closer to the nobles wanting to come and be with.
Well, right,
on
because
your
at that
team or
point
whatever.
you're just piling
Well,
on.
I mean, the nobles just add efficiency.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've talked about it. We've gone pretty in depth on it, I think.
I don't think there's too much more we can say about it. I think we're ready to give it a
we
rating.
can't talk longer than the actual game. That would seem
kind of
improper.
weird.
Yeah.
I mean, should we just leave like a 5-minute pregnant pause?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think it may be time to call our ratings for Splendor. And we'll start with the youngest player at the table.
And that would be Jeremy?
No.
Oh, no, wait. Almost by a decade.
No.
It's Sam.
It's me. I'm the youngest at the table.
I mean, thank you, but no.
You look the youngest.
It's the beard. So I enjoy Splendor. I don't know. It's a game that I personally would pick off of the shelf. But that's just because I enjoy long, complicated games. And Splendor is not long and it is not complicated, but it shines despite that, I think. It is the gems. You know, they're so
gems.
pretty to
You
look
add
at.
a solid set of clay chips to any game, it
Right,
raises
and they're
its value.
so pretty too. It's just that's true. We didn't talk about the component quality. They're good. Like
Yeah. People have played Splendor before. Just give it the rating.
they're hefty. It's a strong 7.
Strong 7. Okay.
Strong 7. I enjoy playing this, and it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Excellent. All right. From the youngest to the oldest.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to give this a 7, and I'm going to tell you why. You know, you look at the BGG rating scale, and more or less it puts every game in a 7, maybe a 7.5. But Splendor is like the most poster child game for game nerds. I mean, it's the game that just sort of does what it's the tightest, most ultimate Euro. It's just that package that sort of represents everything that is that entire Euro game sort of approach to everything. So I think not only is it a 7, but it is the single most middle 7 that we have played.
All right. Let's go to our special guest, Jeremy.
I like it. My family is a hard card game family.
Okay.
And I have brought Splendor to an assortment of gatherings in an attempt to get them to play something other than a card game.
Okay.
And I believe this game can do it.
Okay.
Because it's easy enough, and it still has cards. So
It does still have cards.
It's familiar.
Yeah, right.
There's no luck.
There's no luck in dice rolling. It's simple enough.
It's pretty.
It's pretty. That is kind of a prerequisite for games that I buy.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there's a traditional card game that it's sort of more similar to, and I don't think there is. Maybe like Rummy 500, where you're picking up cards and making investments in order to play down later.
I'm going to give it 7 blue tokens.
7 blue tokens.
That's probably like a 5-point card.
Specifically blue.
Well, Chris, it comes to you.
You know, this is one of my favorite games. I enjoy pulling it out. There's not a lot of strategy to it. It is a good intro game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It'll go back in the box. It'll go on the shelf. A couple weeks from now, we could play it again, and I'd be happy to. So I'm with you, John. I think it's a strong 7, middle of the road 7.
Quintessential 7.
Quintessential 7.
I think that's it. So we have splendored for the evening.
I just want to take a moment to congratulate myself for beating Chris in a game of Splendor.
I think this is your first. Well, no, we won last week, so
Yeah, we did win last
victorious.
week. That's right.
You're undefeated still for the new year, so
right.
congratulations.
John, Chris, Sam, and Jeremy, thank you for joining them in conversation about Splendor. You can join us in conversation by visiting our website, cellargames.com, where you can find links to our social media and Discord server. We also have a blog and a guild on Board Game Geek. We look forward to hearing from you.